Welcome to Facing the Canon. My guest on the programme is Di Archer, CEO of the charity tastelife. Di, welcome to Facing the Canon.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I discovered just before our interview that your husband and I went to the same theological college.
Yes, you did, didn't you? But I won't hold that against you.
Oh, I loved my time at theological college. I really did. And obviously you and your husband have been in ministry of various kinds. Just tell us a little bit of what you and he have done over the last few decades.
Oh, golly. Well, I was at theological college with him. But before we went there, we got married like 3 years beforehand. And the first thing we did, we went to Japan as missionaries with a little tiny missionary society that's called the Japan Christian Link. And it was then called the Japan Evangelistic Band. We had someone come to uni when we were there to talk about it. And my husband Graham thought, oh, I love bands. I'm a musician. I'll go and listen to the band. But little did he know that God was going to call him and me as well to go to Japan as missionaries for a couple of years and do church planting. The Japanese church is amazing. Japanese Christians are incredible. And the Japanese church needs, lots of prayer and encouragement. So it was a real privilege to do that. So we did that for a couple of years. Then we came back to theological college. Lots of very stretching learning. I don't know whether you found the same.
Always stretching and learning.
Yeah. But then we went to Ipswich, to St Matthew's Ipswich for curacy time. So, and we were there when they were church planting into neighbouring estates that we helped out with. We had our first child, and that again was very significant. We had the new leadership team that I was part of, and lots of that hurly-burly of growing with God, discovering that the Holy Spirit is actually real and does things. And it was a good time, really good time. And then after that, the bishop at the time, Bishop John Dennis, had this brilliant idea that maybe it would be good to have a church, send us out to the Far East. But actually the Far East turned out to be Felixstowe, which is sort of near Belgium. And to church plant because the docks had grown up a big community around it and lots of new housing. So it was like this bit of Felixstowe had churches, but the new bit didn't. So they said, well, why don't you just go and start a church there? This was John Dennis, and we were like, how do we do that? He said, we'll drive you around the estate so you can just think, well, our parishioners will probably be behind these doors. So they bought us a house on one of the estates, and that was probably faith-wise the biggest adventure to date for me, because it was suddenly we didn't have anything. It was like we had no church team. We had nothing. It was just us and 2 kids by that stage, and a lounge with a pink carpet, which for some reason always seems relevant, mainly because we had the church in our lounge, and it was a new carpet, and it got ruined very, very fast. Cost of ministry, but it was like, unless God is real, this isn't going to work, and unless God is real and does what He says, then we might as well, be doing something completely different. And it was through that kind of going out on the limb that we discovered His faithfulness, wonderful stories of people coming to faith, people who had been, I think, prepared, and suddenly this was the moment that they encountered Jesus. And the church grew quite rapidly, and we had to move out of our lounge and move into other places, a school hall, and then an old disused church, and then eventually we built our own building right in the middle of the estates that's still going strong.
Wonderful. Yeah. So many encouragements, aren't there, as you look back? But you now are the CEO of tastelife.
Yes.
Okay, tastelife, what is that?
Okay, so tastelife is a charity that helps people break free from eating disorders.
And that's a massive area and need today. And that journey began when you discovered that your daughter was having issues with eating disorders. Tell us about how you first discovered that.
Yeah, okay. I think, thank you for letting me talk about this. I think eating disorders are actually hard to talk about. People do find it difficult, and we want to give people permission to talk about them because they're often very hidden and very difficult to face up to and acknowledge. And certainly before this happened to our family, by this time we were in Southampton at a different church. Certainly before then, we knew nothing. I knew nothing, zero about eating disorders. And I suppose if someone had asked me, I would have said, well, I don't know, didn't Princess Diana have bulimia? And I knew nothing else. But our eldest daughter had gone to the States on holiday. And just before she'd gone, she'd said to me, she was sort of late teens at uni, and she'd said, I'm losing a bit of weight. And I was like, well, don't worry about that, darling, just eat some more. It was like, well,
sure.
Yeah. Didn't
just
think,
eat a bit more and you'll be okay.
Yeah, didn't think twice about it. But then it was, she'd been out there for a couple of weeks, and I had a phone call on a Sunday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning when my husband Graham had already gone off to church. So I took the call from a hospital in America saying, we have your daughter here. She's okay, but her life is hanging by a thread. Did you know that she'd got a combination of bulimia and anorexia? And she has depleted her body so much of potassium, she's put her life in danger. That was kind of like our plonk into the deep end of eating disorders. My husband had to go and get out to get her because she wasn't allowed to travel on her own. And she came back and was she was embarrassed and yet also kind of overwhelmed by the fact of how ill she had no idea. She had no idea about how ill you can make yourself by both not eating and throwing up. So, which was what was happening to her. And one of the things about eating disorders, John, is that denial is a strong thing.
Yes.
So she had she hadn't made any of the connections at all with what she was actually doing behaviour. I think she thought, well, I'm probably dehydrating myself, but that was it.
So Di, when we're talking about eating disorders like bulimia and anorexia, what actually are we saying?
So we're talking about actually mental health conditions that are significant and that they have eating behavioural things associated with them. So it's not just about, let's say this straight away, they're not just about food. Food is kind of like the symptom. It's like the top of the iceberg, if you like, the food behaviour. But there's other things that are going on underneath. So the thing that we saw, the top thing, there's three main eating disorders, which are anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. Binge eating disorder is probably self-explanatory.
Yes.
But bulimia is where you can't keep food down and you throw it up.
Yes.
And then anorexia means you're just starving yourself to dangerous levels. You're just not eating enough. And I think the general perception from society, and certainly what I thought before, was, well, I don't know why you're doing that, just stop. But they're addictive behaviours because your body adapts really, really fast to things that you're doing and starts producing chemicals in a different way. So it becomes a kind of psychological and physiological addiction very fast. So one of the things we say at tastelife, which is all about tasting life, and getting fullness of life back again, is one of the things we always say is that people deserve the fullest love, support, and care. This isn't about willpower. It's not about well, why don't you just? It's not a phase. It's not attention seeking. Although actually we all need attention, don't we?
We all, yeah.
It's not attention seeking per se. But it's, as I said, a significant mental health condition that needs a lot of support and help to recover. But recover is entirely possible. And there are others, just to say, there are other eating disorder variations as well. Yeah.
But
yes.
how did your daughter find recovery? And how did you and your husband, if I may say, got educated as to what the issues were and how to respond to them?
Okay, so I suppose starting backwards, she got ill just before the summer. In fact, just before we were going to the New Wine holiday. But before we went, we were like, okay, what are we going to do? You know, how do we now keep our daughter alive? Now, when I say the next bit, I mean, don't hear me wrong. I love the NHS with a passion.
Yes.
Half my family work for the NHS, but that you know, they can't help everyone. They can't see everyone. And I think that eating disorders services are overstretched, just like the rest of the NHS. But, you know, the help that we received was a bit limited. So we had to do a lot of our own research. Now, we did that two ways. So one, we just read and talked to people and looked online. But also, we had an amazing friend called Jean in our church, in Highfield Church, Southampton, and she was an eating disorder trained counsellor. And she was like our rock during that time.
She must have been.
Yeah, because she understood that it wasn't just a annoying thing that someone was doing, but actually something that needs help and support and understanding. So we did that. So it was kind of like, we did quite a lot of our own research, and I discovered quite quickly much more about eating disorders than I guess some of the local NHS people knew, because they don't get any they don't get training, something that we're campaigning on to change. But so we had to find out for ourselves. And I think we went along to a group where there were some other parents, and it was like an NHS group. Best possible motives, but I think as us just sort of pushed into the deep end, it just felt like a very frightening thing, because there didn't seem to be any hope anywhere. Didn't seem to be any hope. So we were like, what's missing here? What's missing? We really need some more support here. So to start with, Jean was amazing. And then we went to New Wine, and I just have to tell you this story because it's so key. It's so key to what we do now as a charity. So this is my daughter's story. She was in the worship session in New Wine. Thousands of people worshiping God.
And feeling quite poorly.
Oh, we had to drag her there. She was very, very weak. She wanted to stay in the caravan. She still was really struggling to eat, struggling to keep anything down. You know, the same things were still happening. And we were scared out of our minds as to what was going on and how to cope, and, you know, stressed and not sleeping and all that kind of stuff. We were in this worship service, and apparently she said she was sitting down because she couldn't stand up. She was too weak. And she was just thinking, she says, her words, I just wanted to die because I don't know how to live, and I'm exhausted with trying to even stay alive for the rest of the day. So she said, but then while she was just sitting there watching everybody worship, she describes it as she had a sort of picture in her mind, sort of vision thing, where she had this picture of herself in the dirt, face down in the dirt, covered in muck, just kind of completely at the end of herself. And in this vision, she saw a pair of feet walking towards her. And she thought, if this person tells me to get up, I can't do it. You know, I'm done. But the person did. The person came and sat down next to her, and then lay down next to her, and then put his face in the dirt and the muck next to her, and then turned his face to her and said, whenever you're ready. And I think for her, it was like somebody seen, and she would say her faith had, you know, was practically non-existent at that point. But she was like, I didn't ask for any of this. I'm not making this up. It's got to be Jesus, hasn't it? Can't be anyone else.
Got to be Jesus.
Yeah. And for her, that was just a huge, I've been seen, I am known. Somebody has seen how bad this is and has said, whenever you're ready. For her, that was a big turning point, I think. Just the first step the first step. Now, over the years, John, because of
Yes.
this charity that we're running, I've talked to so many people, Christians or those of other faiths or non-faith, and it's just wonderful when we hear some of those similar sort of stories of God coming right out, because it doesn't matter where we are, he can always come. So that was her number one.
So that was number one.
That was number one.
But it's almost like the door opened.
Yeah, that was
And then
number one.
how did she then discover recovery and restoration?
Okay, two things. One, good things. One was NHS, so that she could go to a day centre. She went to a day centre, but also she went to see our friend Jean, so who would give us a bit of a break sometimes, because we had to be with her 24/7. She was never allowed to be on her own. So Jean, a combination of those two things, and Jean just waited until she was ready to talk. Sometimes she just laid on the sofa, I think, and didn't. And gradually got out of her what was going on underneath the iceberg. This is what's happening with food, but what's going on underneath. So gradually, she would say there were some things in her childhood that she hadn't resolved. There were things that were difficult for her to cope with now, and gradually they began to unravel some of those things and started taking tiny, tiny steps back into recovery. But it took a long time.
And today, how is your daughter?
Oh my gosh, she is married, got 3 kids, thriving. Yeah, she's great.
So you and your husband learnt masses.
Yes.
With your own daughter.
Yeah.
And is that what prompted you to birth tastelife?
So we were having a year of mission in Highfield Church, and the question was, what has God put on your heart to do for him? And Jean, this friend, and I looked at each other and said, we've got to do something about eating disorders. NHS can't see everybody. We've got to do something to fill the gap. I mean, I now look back and think, what was I thinking? What were we thinking? If I'd known, I'd be sitting here today, John.
Yes.
But
isn't it amazing how the Lord used the story of your own daughter to kind of create this?
Because what we thought was, what would we have liked? What would we have liked? And what we would have wanted is what we've created, or this what's our like flagship as a charity, if you like, which is a course that takes you on the journey to learn how you got to this place.
And now I have some of your resources, Di, here.
Magic.
Please talk us through some of the resources that you have.
So I'd love to, thank you.
Please.
So this is our community course.
Yes.
And this is the one that we started with, because this is what we would have wanted. We would have wanted to go somewhere with our daughter that helped us to understand what was happening and how to, what the possibility of recovery was and how to do that. So this course is this is what we created then, accredited by University of Brighton Health Sciences, now endorsed by Open College Network London.
Yes, so it's a recognised course.
It's all pucker. It's all pucker.
Yes.
It's been through eating disorder units and all the rest.
How many sessions is the course, Di?
So it's 8 sessions, 2 hours each, weekly basis, and it takes you on a journey from where you are now. And it's online or face-to-face, and it's run by our trained and accredited volunteers.
And the course is not just for those suffering with eating disorders, it's for their carers as well.
Yeah, and that's so important because it affects everybody. Eating disorders are hell on earth, not just for the person who is directly affected, but also family and friends as well who don't know what to do. And we find that most people are terrified of making it worse, terrified of saying the wrong thing, more likely to say nothing. So it's just trying to help us all come together in a safe, non-judgmental, learning environment where we can take steps, support each other together into taking steps into recovery. We have had some amazing, dramatic recoveries. We've also had people who, make some progress now and then come back later and say, and now I'm at this place, and now I'm at this place, I'm doing so well. We do, I think, like 96% make measurable progress, people that come on, and that's for those who are, supporters, family and friends as well.
That's huge,
It is
96%.
It is huge.
Do you have any other stats for us, Di, so that we're aware of how big is this issue of eating disorders, for example, in the UK?
Okay, so it is massive, John. It's like a silent epidemic. So even over tastelife is 10 years old, and over that time, when we started, they reckon there was about just under 10% of teenage girls with eating disorders. That's now jumped to 12.5%. They used to say it's 1.25 million. They're now talking about 3 million plus. And these are just the people that we know about. So hospital admissions over the last 5 years have gone up 85% for eating disorders. So it is like, COVID hasn't helped. Of course, it hasn't helped because that's put pressure on people emotionally. And in essence, eating disorders are a way of coping with life, with difficult things in life. And, we all have coping techniques, and this is just one of them, but it's just such a hard one.
Yes, and you mentioned girls,
Yeah.
but it does affect boys.
All ages, everyone. It doesn't
Everyone.
matter. It doesn't matter. And I used to think it was just teenage girls, but it so isn't. They're probably counted best, but we have people of all ages on our courses, men, women, boys. And in fact, the male is more, stat is the one that's the fastest growing one at the moment.
Really?
Yeah.
So, it is an epidemic.
It is. And that's why we want to give people permission to talk about it, but also in the context of hope, because we have seen so many people recover, and we know that with the right kind of support, it is treatable.
And I do like the name of your charity, Taste Life.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that scripture, taste and see that the Lord is good.
Yes.
And obviously we know that the Lord is good.
Yes.
And we want people to encounter him and the life that he offers. What other resources do you offer?
Yeah, well, that brings up another point, because what we do is accredited for those of all faiths or none. We have medics on our trustee board. Director of Public Health for Southampton helped us launch all of this kind of stuff. So what we do is for those of all faiths or none, but we also have some things that are specifically if you're doing something in the Christian context. So you could ask to go on a community course that is like run by a church.
Yes.
And we've got a supplement, a church supplement that goes alongside it, but you don't have to. And the same is true of some of our other resources.
And on that, Di,
yes.
it would be good, wouldn't it, that every church ran this course?
Yes, it would.
Because obviously the demographic of your stats that you quoted, that means everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere. So that is something. Can I say, if you're a church leader, please tap into the website Taste Life and just look at some of these resources, and maybe that's something you can host in your church. What else do you have?
Thank you, John. To go along with the community course, we have 2 booklets. So we've got, this is written by carers, as in supporters and family and friends, for other carers. And it's really thin, because when you're in the middle of it, a very stressful situation, you really can't concentrate on big, thick books. So these are top tips written by people who have been there. And ditto, this is for people who have recovered. And again, some top tips, just short and sharp, people who we sell those through our website and through our courses. So those are those. And then we've got something, having run this course and discovered that it works. And I can't tell you, the first time that somebody else ran this course after we trained them to do it, and they got even better results than Jean and I had got, we were like made up. You can imagine. And it kind of, that's why it grew, really, because people were like, we're too scared to do this on our own, please will you train us? So that's why we had to start a charity, chose to start a charity, and then start training people. And then we thought, wouldn't it be great if people didn't get eating disorders in the first place?
Yes.
So bearing in mind that 17 to 25-year-olds are the most vulnerable to all sorts of things, including developing eating disorders, we produce preventative things for schools and youth groups. okay, to help people understand eating disorders and avoid them and change their culture and allow people to talk about them, so that, because part of the power is when they're hidden. So we've got here the Taste Life Youth Track, which is 3 sessions for schools and youth groups. Not this is for everyone. This is for everyone, and it just helps people to understand. And it's all ready to roll. And unlike the course where we train people to run it, this has got the training integrated into it, so people can just use it and not be afraid of where it's going. And it's got everything you need in it, you know, everything, all the worksheets and stuff for teachers. And that's the youth track, so that's for everyone.
And I really do like that, Di, you know, preventative.
Yes.
And we're not actually very good, are we, at preventative medicine? You know,
No,
many of
it's
us
hard.
don't have a checkup to see. Normally we only respond once a particular symptom has risen. But if we can educate and equip people.
Yeah, because they know that our kids know about this already. It's not like, you know, people are afraid to talk about it, giving ideas. You know, am I putting ideas in my kids' heads? They know about it already. They're online.
They know someone.
They know.
And they know someone.
Yes, everybody now. When we first started 10 years ago, you know, it was like 2%, like, no, not 2%, like 20% of people, if I had talked about it, would know someone. Now.
Yes.
I cannot go anywhere without people saying, oh yes, my granddaughter or my husband, or, you know, all of that.
Sure.
So that's what I mean by epidemic. So this here, Food, Feelings and Faith, which has a nice workbook and very posh leaders' notes, is the version of Youth Track to run in Christian contexts, so in the schools or youth groups. So that's all, we've just had that. That's a fairly recent design, and we're rather pleased with that one. So again, it's all there, all provided for you, and we give back up. You know, we're here for people to talk to all the time.
Oh, Di, great resources. And of course, great resources highlighting a great need.
And we also do education. So if you want to, your pastoral team or your workplace, to know more about how to respond well to eating disorders, we'll do that too.
Di, all I can say is well done. Keep on keeping on.
Thank
and
you.
how wonderful, you know, God, you used your daughter to get you to eventually do this. So God bless you.
Thank you. Just want to bring hope.
Amen. Well, that certainly does bring us hope. And there is a great need, but there are some great resources. And let's respond to the need, and let's us get educated about them. Thank you so much for joining us on Facing the Canon. Please join us again.